I want to give a special shout out to all my patrons, my Bibliosprand, Bibliohowlers, and Bibliomancers. Thank you so much for supporting my hobby and passion even more. It means so much to me. Hi everyone, Petrik here. Today's video will be a book review for The Lord of Chaos by Robert Jordan. This is the 6th book in the Wheel of Time series, so it's been 6 months. It's been 6 months since I read The Fires of Heaven, which has sparked my love for reading The Wheel of Time again. And I think The Lord of Chaos could potentially become the best book written by Robert Jordan for me. Let The Lord of Chaos rule, and rule it did. To say that I was worried before I dive into The Lord of Chaos can be classified as an understatement. Just a brief summary. Yes, The Fires of Heaven rekindled my love for reading The Wheel of Time again. It rekindled my fire to actually continue reading the series, and I'm glad. I'm really glad that I continued. And now persevere I shall. The book that made me quit The Wheel of Time for years was The Shadow Rising, a book often claimed by many of the fans of the series to be Robert Jordan's best work. Long story short, my binge reading of the series and also my super high expectations towards Shadow Rising back then were hugely responsible for my downfall with the series in 2019. Why am I repeating myself on this? Well, The Lord of Chaos is another one of those books in the series that has received a similar level of praise. Plus, with 389,000 words, it is the second biggest book in the series, just 4,000 words shorter than The Shadow Rising. Fortunately, the result is the exact opposite of me reading The Shadow Rising. Lord of Chaos, despite some of its expected flaws, ended up becoming the best book of the series so far for me, even more than The Great Hunt or The Fires of Heaven. If The Fires of Heaven rekindled the fire in me with the series, well, Lord of Chaos burned it brighter. First things first, take care of what can be done now before worrying too long over what might never be. One step at a time indeed, one book at a time, one book every few months. That is my mindset as I go through The Wheel of Time. And for now, this marathon reading process has worked incredibly well for me with the series. Lord of Chaos begins with the biggest prologue of the series so far. At 70 pages long, the prologue could have worked as a short story or even a short novella. But I must say, I enjoyed reading the prologue. The story in Lord of Chaos revolves around Rand al'Thor, the Dragon Reborn, struggling to bind the nations of the world to his will. Rand is still trying his best to forge the alliances of light necessary to fight the shadow. The preparation for Tarmangaden, the last battle, continues. But as always, other powers seek to command the war against the Dark One. Not willing to let Rand in control, factions, especially Aes Sedai in this book, are racing to manipulate the Dragon Reborn to their respective side. In the meantime, as the realm of men falls into chaos and discord, the Dark One and his bloody servants polish their plan to assault the Dragon Reborn. It is very much necessary for me to begin by saying, especially for first-time readers of the book, do not expect battle scenes or war scenes entering into Lord of Chaos. You will be sorely disappointed if you do. Yes, there is the highly praised Battle of Two Mice Wells, but overall, Lord of Chaos, despite the coolness and the implication of the book title, doesn't feature a lot of battle scenes. Also, unlike the previous books, do not expect a battle against one of the Forsaken here. Let alone war scenes, I think the only battle scenes in this book occurred in the final chapter, and it is not a battle against one of the Forsaken. However, this is not bad news. Jordan managed to make the novel better for it. I will elaborate more on this later as spoiler-free as possible. But first, before I talk about all the goods, let's talk about some of the expected flaws of the novel, which have existed since the previous books in my opinion, and gotten relatively better here in comparison. They are the pacing or verbosity and the main female characters. Shockingly, I will be talking about the miscommunication trope being used here in a better light. I have heard from plenty of readers of the series that, according to them, they've encountered the invasion of the infamous slug of the later books in Lord of Chaos, and I cannot fault them for this. Robert Jordan has always been excellent at writing the beginning and the closing chapters of his book, and that situation did not change here. After the massive prologue, I continue to enjoy reading Lord of Chaos for the entirety of the first quarter of the book. And then after that, the pacing ground to a halt until the 65% mark of the book. By the way, I'm reading Lord of Chaos and every book in the Wheel of Time using my Kindle, so that's why I'm using percentage in my review. But yeah, it was challenging, even boring occasionally, to go through the verbosity of details in dresses and clothing while the plot seemed to move as slowly as possible. However, I must say compared to The Shadow Rising or even The Fires of Heaven, which I enjoyed, the pacing in Lord of Chaos was overall better. Hey, at least we don't have any of those boring to tears circus plotline here. I will always maintain my words that The Wheel of Time, so far anyway, but I do not think that this opinion will change. It's a series that would have been better if it has received another round of editing and trimming. Although I do love intricacies in setting, location, and lore, I, as a reader, do not care too much about reaching this level of details in clothing and dresses. I feel like they delayed some of the greatness of the series. As a comparison, I feel like Brandon Sanderson's way of describing the details of the clothing and the dresses in his books are on the right level of details that I usually love to read. But all of this boiled down to me saying that this pacing has always existed in every book in the series so far. It is expected. I expected them to be there, and by taking a few months break after finishing each book before I move on to the next installment, I feel like I could tolerate and sometimes even appreciate them much better now. Plus, I really love reading the execution of the themes of courage, leadership, and duty in Lord of Chaos, even if we have to drown in a bit of verbosity to get the glimpses of them here and there. Another thing that I would like to talk about before I move on to the main highlights of the novel. I am not a stranger in voicing my dislike towards how the main female characters behave in the series. And no, I doubt the situation will change throughout this series. Not anytime soon. The topic of gender versus gender caused by so many years of prejudice and dominance won't vanish instantly. It is one of the dominant themes of the series. And I have mentioned plenty of times that I did not like Elaine, Aviendha, and definitely not Nynaeve. To be more precise, I have not yet. And I have no idea whether that will change in the later books. We will find out eventually. Although I understand why they behave a certain way, I feel like the non-stop repetition of their behavior made them more annoying than they should. Honestly, the only female characters I have liked in the series so far were Min, as proven further in this book, and Moiraine. But admittedly, I did not find myself angered over the main female characters here. I know, it is surprising. I was frequently angered by how Elaine and Nynaeve behave in the Fires of Heaven, but from my perspective, it was more balanced here. The only character I did not enjoy reading about here, and not in a good way, was Fail. What a failure of a character. How Perrin continuously obsessed over her is beyond my woolhead. Now let's talk about all the great things in Lord of Chaos, and I will begin by saying that I love how the miscommunication trope is used here. Not completely, never completely, it is still used too much in several sections of the book. But remember what I said earlier, that the story in Lord of Chaos did not get so good until we reached the 65% mark of the book. Yes, that has something to do with the game-changing development, even if in my opinion it happened too abruptly, relating to the female characters. After we reached this point, I felt like the plot and the character development in the Lord of Chaos started moving forward compellingly. And guess what? The conflicts surrounding the final 35% of the book mainly revolve around miscommunication and prejudice. I feel like it was executed magnificently. I was constantly holding my breath as I read through the pages of these chapters. The deadly tension in the atmosphere and conversations were undeniably palpable. And I will have to admit that the miscommunication this time was rightfully used to heighten the tension of the narrative. Of course, this kind of result is only possible due to the main highlights of the novel for me, Rand al'Thor, Mazrim Time, and the Ashaman. Every scene with Rand al'Thor, Mazrim Time, and the Ashaman was undoubtedly the best part of Lord of Chaos for me. Look, I do not know where Rand usually stands in the list of favorite characters according to the fans of the Wheel of Time. But for now, Rand and Matt are constantly battling for supremacy as my top favorite character in the series. His romances aside, which I do not think Jordan ever handled well anyway, Rand has undergone an immense character development from his first appearance in The Eye of the World. I also think Rand is a genuinely human main character. His actions, his arrogance, and how he started to accept his role as a Dragon Reborn, everything just felt so believable. I still have a lot of books in the series to read, and I already feel that the result of his character arc will become one of the best in epic fantasy. It is already one of the best after reading Lord of Chaos. The amount of responsibility and ordeals he has to juggle is utterly overwhelming. It is beyond human. Rand's internal grapple with Lews Telamon was always immersive to me, and I am constantly amazed by Rand's perseverance to stay sane. How he remains sane facing the chaos and suffering he has to endure is inspiring. This is on top of so many individuals ceaselessly assuming bad things about him, even when he always tries to do good for the world as best as he can as the Dragon Reborn. I am the Dragon Reborn. Denying won't change it. Wishing won't change it. I'm not the man you knew back in Emond's Field. Introducing Mazrim Time and the Ashaman in this book is one of the best things Jordan has done for the series so far. The Aes Sedai has an irreplaceable hatred toward male channelers, and Mazrim Time is the exact opposite. I felt intimidated by Mazrim Time's presence, and the existence of the Ashaman provides intriguing complexity in the story and confrontations between male and females as it, for better or worse, will shift the political and power dynamics of the world. I say it's about time. This is what the series needs. Conflicts will happen, changes will be inevitable, most likely with sacrifices and death. But Tarmangaden will come eventually, and there is no way of facing it without cooperation between the males and females channelers. I can't wait to find out how all of this will develop. Lastly, I need to mention, once again, that the last 35% of Lord of Chaos was an easy 5-star epic fantasy material in my opinion. All the build-up, the accumulating rage I poured, and the devastating result of prejudice, self-assumption, and miscommunication exploded in the final chapter. As I said earlier, there were close to no battle scenes in Lord of Chaos, but the politicking, manipulation, and intensity sparked by wonderful momentum building between the characters were evident in the text. For years, there has been a lot of hype and praise about the Battle of Dumais Wells. I approached this battle with a cautious expectation, but also feelings of excitement. And you know what? The chapter successfully delivered an intensely memorable scene. It was immensely impactful and satisfying. I believe it is one of the best chapters of the entire series. It is a relatively short chapter for such an eventful climax sequence, and I wish it had been a bit longer. However, every sentence in the chapter, especially after all the momentum building and adding my vivid imagination, certainly enhanced the weight of the battle scene. In this one chapter alone, I spotted at least 3 really iconic lines that will stand the test of time. One of them being, "Kneel and swear to the Lord Dragon, or you will be knelt." God, even saying that makes me want to reread the last few chapters again. Thousands of participants were involved, lives were cleaved, vengeance enacted, armies converged, wolves howled, weapons brandished, lightning weaved, and a rolling ring of earth and fire ignited an explosion of blood and flesh. It was a day of carnage. It was a day of fire and blood. I think you will have noticed that I love Lord of Chaos despite some of its, well, apparent issues. Suffice to say that, personally speaking, this is the best installment in the Wheel of Time so far. And Lord of Chaos, the 6th book in the Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan, could potentially become the best book solely written by him for the series, not including the one that's written by Brandon Sanderson. We will find out eventually whether that becomes the case or not. I am saying this because I know where I am at with the series now. The upcoming 4 books after this, from A Crown of Swords until Crossroads of Twilight, are supposedly the infamous slog installments of the series. And I don't think I ever heard any fans of the Wheel of Time consider any of the next 5 books in the series, up to Knife of Dreams, as their personal favorite books in the series. I will make sure to lower my expectations reading them. Obviously, just like how I did not predict I would enjoy Lord of Chaos this much, I will be happy to be proven wrong. Lord of Chaos went above and beyond my expectation, going as far for it to be included in my list of favorite books, which is a first for any book in the Wheel of Time. If all goes according to plan, I will read A Crown of Swords either in November or December. Until then, let the Lord of Chaos rule. The wheel weaves as the wheel wheels. So yeah, that's it for today's video. If you have read Lord of Chaos, do let me know whether this one is one of your personal favorites in the series or not. Or if not, do tell me which book in the series is your personal favorite, without spoiler though. And I'm really thankful that all of you are willing to participate in my journey with the Wheel of Time, even if it's super slow. But this pacing, 1 book every few months, is the right pacing for me with this series. So yeah, as always, thank you so much for watching, and thank you for your support. Bye bye. Lastly, I want to say thank you so much to all my patrons. Your support means so much to me.